Ladies and gentlemen, we do thank you very much for your attention, and now we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Welcome to our top travel destinations. I am your host, Kevin Flanagan. I have been editor of the weekly travel news column in the Sunday Independent and the Fine Wine and Food Guide, and I am here to use my decades of experience to help you know exactly where to stay, eat, drink, shop, and explore when visiting the world's top travel destinations. So sit back and enjoy the wonders of travel as we take off on our magical journey together. Welcome to a special podcast on the top travel destinations. My name is Kevin Flanagan, and this week we are talking about: is flying business class worth it? I'm also going to give you an insider's look into how to get the best business class deals. But first, let's have a little look at this almost mythical thing called business class. It's extraordinary. If you go on YouTube, there are so many videos of bloggers and podcasters sharing their luxury, and there's a great envy value as well in the first class, business class mystique. I was talking to a friend recently who is going to celebrate a big birthday with some of his pals, and he spent most of the time talking about how they were really trying to get business class flights to this long-haul destination they were all going to. So I think business class is really the equivalent of what Christmas used to be like for kids. It's the adult version. It's a complete fantasy, and it's an indulgence of sorts. Now, there is a serious side to flying business class, particularly if you're concerned about your health and your ability to perform after a long flight. And I would say long flights being 12, 14 hours plus. Business class can make quite a difference to how you feel and how you recover when you enter different time zones. Now, I'm basing my experience for this podcast on a recent flight I took from Dublin, Ireland, all the way over to Bangkok in Thailand for a major trip around Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, which you may have heard episodes of on the Top Travel Destinations podcast. This is a 17-hour flight in total with a break in Dubai, and I was lucky enough to have flown business class. Emirates is quite rightly, I think, regarded as one of the premium airlines. They are not sponsoring this podcast in any way, shape or form. These are my own views and experiences of the airline, because I have also flown to Asia with other carriers like Cathay Pacific and Turkish. But for this particular podcast, I'm going to share my experience of what it's actually like flying business class with a premium brand airline and answering the question, is it worth it? So let's just jump straight in. What do you get? For those who haven't experienced business class, what's the big deal about? Well, I'm going to give it to you in short form. Number one, it's a very privileged form of travel, I think. Firstly, there are no queues. When I arrived at Dublin Airport recently for my flight, there was a huge tailback for economy. Not huge, but long enough. You'd be standing on your feet with your bags to put in for a fair while. The business and first class aisle, there was one person in it. So you're not waiting around. You also have access to lounges. Here you can have a massage, you can have a shave, you can sleep. I've slept in business class lounges on long haul flights. You can eat and drink whatever you like, basically. Champagne, fantastic local foods. You can even go and smoke in a very, very relaxed smoking area. You have your own private entrance. There's no long queues. When you arrive, your coat's taken off, a glass of champagne is shoved into your hand, and you sit in these incredible pods which have a lie-flat bed. If you press a button, you're immediately in this sense of privilege. you have massive amount of space. And then when food is served, you get proper cutlery, you get delf and china, you get beautiful glasses, and you get a fantastic selection of food and wine. The finest champagnes, the finest wines I was drinking on this recent flight. Some great Bordeaux's of 2010 vintage. A serious package. Then, of course, when it comes to bedtime, they put down a mattress and you can lie flat, you can tuck up, you can put your earplugs in, your mask over, and you can actually sleep. What I occasionally do is when I'm flying business class, I'll go and peep into economy and you will see the difference immediately. It's palpable in the air. People are bolt upright in their seats. They're crammed in. You could have a crying baby. So there is a big difference. I'll be talking about the Airbus, which I take always from Dubai to Bangkok. This is a double-decker, the giant plane, where it has a bar, it has a lounge. You can have showers, you can sit and chat. It's quite incredible. You've entertainment, of course. They also, with Emirates, they have a pickup at the other end. So if you're flying business class, you may well be eligible for a limo to take you home. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? Well, let's look at the cons then of flying business class. Well, the main one is probably cost. You're looking at between 5 and 10 times the amount to fly business class. So if you're spending 5,000 return trip to a long haul destination, you're going to spend between 5,000 and 10,000. Now that is a big jump, and not many people would countenance that. If you want to go from business class right up to first class, well, that's even a bigger jump, and that may be for a different podcast, but just to give you a taste of it, there's one airline in particular, Singapore, who fly the longest route available, which is a 19-hour flight from New York. I think it's right across to Hong Kong or Singapore, and that is $23,000. So you can see that unless you have deep pockets or you are flying for a business that can afford it, or that you're a journalist or a podcaster with some clout, flying business class is something that would be very challenging for most wallets. So let me go into a little bit of detail on the recent flight I took just a couple of weeks ago, leaving cold Ireland for very sunny and very hot Bangkok. When you arrive at Dublin Airport, as they say, there is no queue. You immediately deposit your bag and you whisk through security. You go through the fast track security in all the airports when you're business class. Another thing that will happen is that your bags are the first off as well. So you're out of the aircraft at the destination point and your bag is usually waiting for you on the carousel. These can make a difference. They're small things, but they can make a difference to the state you're in when you get off the flight. And I'm really going to concentrate on how me, as a sort of a mature guy, feels when he's been on a long-haul flight and how does that impact my health and well-being. And I think this is actually one of the critical elements in whether business class is worth it or not. As I said, one of the most extraordinary things of getting on the Emirates flight is flying on the Airbus A380. This is the double-decker bus. It's the biggest and most luxurious plane in existence. Emirates are one of the few airlines that actually use this plane because it's 4 engines and it's regarded as being challenging as regards making something that is going to be economically sound. The spaciousness of the Airbus 380 is really remarkable. You actually go upstairs for first class and business class. You can climb the stairs. If you go on YouTube, you will see many of the influencers making quite a big deal of the steps leading up to the top. It's real upstairs, downstairs, upstairs being the posh people, downstairs being the ordinary folk. And there is that sort of vibe going on, but that seems to be one of the realities when you do travel in business class. When you get upstairs, you have this fantastic spacious cabin, very comfortable ergonomic seating. You have the ICE system on Emirates, which is the in-flight entertainment. So you have this huge number of films you can watch. It's very, very good quality, high definition. The dining, of course, is fantastic. And then you have this onboard lounge at the end. There's a bar. It's like a small pub. You can order whatever you want. You can have snacks. You can have a lovely brandy. You can have a glass of rare champagne. Whatever you wish. You can then chat away and stand or sit in this bar area. And I'll put a couple of photographs on the accompanying fact sheet that you will see on the toptraveldestinations.com website, so you can actually see the luxury and how I actually got behind the bar and helped myself. It was a wonderful experience. And it really does break up the flight because you chat to people, you're standing or sitting in this lounge area. It's really quite extraordinary how that breaks it up. And when it comes to the idea that people are prone, particularly as they get older, to clots and the other dangers of long-haul flights, actually being able to move around this lounge cabin at the back of the Airbus is obviously hugely beneficial when it comes to health, as long as you don't overindulge the alcohol and you keep well hydrated. What was very interesting about my flight is we stopped off at Dubai, and in Dubai, Emirates encourage you to stay in one of their hotels, which are very near the airport. I made use of this facility when I was traveling to Thailand. You get transferred to the hotel which is nearby. Everything is available at the hotel, food and drink. I made the trip into the city centre of Dubai to catch some of the sights, the world's tallest building, some of the shopping malls. It's an interesting experience if you haven't been to Dubai. It's quite extraordinary. When I was on the train, I was looking around and noticing, well, that's really strange. There were just women. I was surrounded by females of all ages. And then finally, someone leaned over and said, "This is a woman's only carriage." I was quite taken aback. I stood up and I walked maybe 10 meters to the right. There's no divide between the various carriages, and the next carriage was just full of men. They were standing with no divide between the women and the men. It took me by surprise, to be honest. But you can be fined if you're caught in the carriage that is not appropriate to your gender. So be careful if you do go to Dubai and you use the public train system that you find your appropriate carriage, or else then you can rest in your hotel. I had a swim, I did a little workout in the pool, had something to eat, and then you're really prepared for the second part of the flight. My flight then was from Dubai to Bangkok. Again, you don't have any queues, you're fast boarding, you sit in your business class pod, you're looked after like a king, basically, and then you have the flatbed experience where you can sleep and really enjoy the experience. We did get a look into first class, just to give you an idea of what first class is like on the Emirates Airbus. You have your own lounge, you have your own area. You can close the door on it. In some planes, you can have a shower, you have your seat, and you have your bed separate. And you really are looked after like a prince. Some people actually complain that it is a little bit too isolating and you can have more fun and more human interaction in business class, but I suppose that is most definitely a Class A problem. So there you have it. I arrived in Bangkok after 17 hours of flying with this break. Going back to Dublin, it was the same thing, 17 hours, just with a 1 hour break that time. How did I feel when I got off the plane? Well, you can't avoid jet lag. You're still putting your body through quite a lot of stress going to these different time zones. This can have an impact on your overall health and well-being. In the worst case, you can have DVDs, the deep vein thrombosis. But if you're careful, you take a lot of fluids, you keep active, you wear those special socks, depending on your medical condition and what your doctor advises. But I would have to say one of the main advantages was feeling pretty fresh when you get off. So in one sense, it's about, if you can afford it, then it makes quite a lot of sense to use business class. So let's look at a few ways on how to make business class more affordable and how to get the best deals when buying business class tickets, because there are ways to avoid paying 5 times the economy, and I'm going to give you a little insight, a few secrets as to how to get the best deals. Firstly, if you're flexible on your travel dates, if you fly off peak times, if you choose alternative airports, that's a very important thing. You can often get business class at surprisingly low fares, maybe just double what it is in the economy. That's a pretty significant saving, so always check. And it's always useful to check on the actual airline's website, I have found. But I'm going to give you some tips. There's some aggregators, there are some particular sites which specialize in giving deals on business class. But if you're flexible on your travel dates and your destinations, that can make a big deal. Booking in advance, that can usually result in cheaper or a lot cheaper flights, particularly during peak seasons. You can book up to 11 months ahead with some airlines, and you can avail of very, very good price comparisons there and savings. I was talking to a friend recently who's going on this boys only birthday bash, and they booked the 11 months ahead and they got it significantly cheaper, just twice what it was for business class. You can use fare comparison websites such as Google Flights and Skyscanner, of course, which I use quite a lot, and Kayak. This compares prices across different airlines, booking platforms, and they can give very useful features like flexible date searches and price alerts. And when it comes to price alerts, I definitely sign up for the alerts. There are fare alert notifications for airlines, travel agencies, fare comparison websites, and these alerts will notify you when there are price drops or special promotions. And if there's a new route, you may be worth considering flying business class, even first class, because when there's a new route with an airline, they can sometimes make fantastic offerings. One of the staple ways of being able to afford business class is the loyalty program. So you have frequent flyer programs, you can accumulate miles, you can also accumulate points through loyalty programs on credit card rewards. Amex, for example, are well known for giving points that can then be used to offset business class flights. And you can get very good discounted and upgrade fares. I was doing a little bit of research on this, and I found Iberia business class from Boston to New York to Madrid with Iberia for as low as 34,000 miles each way, which is not a lot of miles. If you were looking at the full thing, it would be 150,000 miles. So that's a significant 1/5. A one-way flight from New York JFK to Lisbon with TAP, Portugal, again 35,000 miles. Now, a return trip from New York to Japan, which is a serious flight, there and back, 75,000 miles. So again, if you are into collecting points, collecting miles, this is a serious way to allow you every year or two to give yourself a special treat, you and a significant other, a special treat on a long-haul destination, and you may well be able to afford it. And I'd grab that with both hands, particularly if you build up your points and your miles. Always keep an eye out for sales and promotions. These are offered by airlines, travel agencies. So follow airlines on social media, sign up for their newsletters, and check their websites for deals and discounts. And you will most definitely, if you apply yourself, get access to great deals. There's alternative booking methods. As I've said before, the airline's website can result, particularly if you contact them by phone, which I did recently, you can get actually significantly better deals. I'm not too sure why that happens, but it does. So ring the airline if you have a choice of a dream destination and you just want to check out what the best business class is. And negotiate. There's last minute bookings and group travel. It may be worth trying to negotiate the price of a business class ticket directly, as I say, through the airline or with a travel agent. There's some of the travel department. There's some really amazing deals out there if you look. And some of the airlines do offer a bidding process. For a minimum of $300, you can put in, as long as you have your economy ticket and you have the reference number, you can enter this with the particular airline, and you will be informed before the flight leaves that yes, your bid was successful. That can be an upgrade for $300. And I would look at some of these websites. I'm going to put the details of these in the accompanying fact sheet. There's famously the points guy. He's going to give you exact recommendations for how to get the best business tickets. Then there's 1 Mile at a Time, Flyer Talk, Seat Guru, Secret Flying, and of course, the very, very famous Scott's Cheap Flights. And all of these, once you've signed up with them, will keep you in the loop on what's coming up, where to get the best deal, and so you may actually be able to avail of a business class flight at something that will not make havoc of your bank account. What's my ultimate verdict, my truthful verdict on flying business class? I think if you're very clever, it can be negotiated and you get a very good price, then I think it's a no-brainer. If you were going to treat yourself, you could look at it in this way and say, well, I'm going to make a significant saving by going business class. What's a good night's sleep worth? A couple of $100? To lie flat and to be cocooned in this very, very relaxed atmosphere. What's it worth to save maybe 90 minutes on queuing? What's the price on stretching and being able to spend 9, 10, 12 hours on a plane without a stiff neck? I think these are all the factors that you need to put into whether business class is worth it or not. There are many people I know who would not even countenance going business class. My son, for example, would think it's completely an unnecessary indulgence. But we all have our own views. And my own view would be this. Flying long haul can take a toll, particularly as you get a bit older, and I'm in that state now, where there can be possible health risks in long-haul flying. If there are not health risks, and there shouldn't be if you take the right medical advice and care and stay hydrated and move and get up and wear your right socks, it can take a toll on your body when it comes to the actual hours spent sitting upright, the stiff neck, the lack of sleep, the encroachment of people and possible babies, and the noise over an 18-hour long-haul flight. That can have an impact. What is that worth to you? So I would finally say this. My verdict is business class is definitely worth it for the health and the wellness benefits. If you can combine it with some of the tactics that I've suggested in this podcast for getting the best possible deal by using the alternative booking methods, using your air miles, looking for sales and promotions, the loyalty programs, contacting the airline direct, then you may well get a business class flight that is not significantly more expensive than your usual economy flight. So if you box clever, then it may well be, as they say, you're going to be able to turn left when you get on your long-haul flight, turn left into business class, where you're going to really be pampered. And it is a bit like Christmas morning for the adults among us, when you get that glass of champagne and you can sit comfortably and know that the next hours are not going to be an ordeal. And what is that worth? So that's the end of our Is Business Class Travel Worth It? If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us by sharing it with one friend. We want to share all this insider knowledge on how to make the most of your travel with as many people as possible. So we would really appreciate that. I'm doing a separate podcast on the very next level of travel, which is flying in a private jet. That is some experience that even tops the experiences we've been discussing above. So check that podcast out, and I'll see you the next time.